Almost a dozen years after Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the church in Wittenberg, and as a direct result of the Swiss Reformation, a group of Protestant Christian refugees of Austro-Bavarian descent established a colony at Austerlitz, Moravia, in what is now part of Czechoslovakia. These people were to live a life of seclusion from the rest of the world, a life of persecution because of their beliefs. They were the first Hutterites who believed in a community of goods according to the Bible, Acts 2:47, and all those who believed were together and had all things common. The group name was to come later from a leader named Jacob Hutter, who was burned at the stake in 1536. The history of the Hutterites has been one of martyrdom, of persecution and flight to avoid it. Their beliefs as Anabaptists, their communal way of living, have been continually despised or misunderstood for over 400 years, forcing migrations through Austria, Transylvania, which is now part of Romania, through Moravia, Imperial Russia, and finally to North America in 1874. And the Hutterites continued to find that tolerance can be an elusive thing. The first American Hutterites settled in South Dakota, only to be forced to move to Canada during World War I because of rising sentiment against their Germanic heritage. From Canada, the Montana Hutterites came in the late 1940s, following the passage of restrictive land purchase legislation north of the border. Today, there are 20,000 Hutterites in North America, 200 colonies, 70 of them in the United States, twice as many in Canada. In Montana, there are 21 colonies, like this one, Miller, just outside Choteau. Construction of Miller Colony was begun by the men of the parent OK Colony of Raymond, Alberta in 1948. The move was made to Montana in 49. Today, there are 20 families at Miller Colony for a total of about 115 people. It's impossible to separate the Hutterite way of life from its history, traditions, and religion, and it's impossible for the outsider to completely understand. The community of goods idea, for example, is not seen in any typically restrictive light. As one minister put it, here no one owns anything, but everyone owns everything. And the Hutterites are Anabaptists. That is, like the Amish and the Mennonites, they believe in adult or believer's baptism. They're also pacifists, and they shun the frills of the outside world. But unlike the old order Amish, they see nothing wrong in adapting modern technology to increasing colony agricultural production. Increased self-sufficiency, in turn, allows them to better practice their beliefs with a minimum of outside interference. The Hutterites live as families, though men and women are separated for seating at the community dining hall, for daily church services, for their sermons that have been handed down for centuries, and for group work. Children are also seated separately for meals. Hutterite homes are individual family units in duplexes or fourplexes for the most part, and they're assigned according to need. Joe Wirtz's home is typical, with no special furnishings other than a large desk, although he does hold one of the more important colony positions, that of treasurer and manager. Joe was elected to that position by the baptized men of Miller Colony and its daughter colony, Sage Creek. The baptized men also select the minister, who serves for life, and they elect the various operation bosses. Joe Wirtz's home, like the others at Miller Colony, is large and comfortable, with a spotless interior and handmade furniture. Is it all made by hand? Can you tell me how it's done?
Well, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of work. Take a lot of experience.
I noticed I don't see any nails. Is it all joined without nails? Or?
That's right.
On the day we visited Joe, his wife and daughters were sewing. What are you sewing there? Do you make all of your own clothes?
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Good. And across the yard, a group of women were weaving a rug. What are you doing here, and how are you doing it?
Well, we're weaving it through like this.
Well, show them how you're doing it.
Well, it's through.
How long does a rug like this take to make?
Well, we started at about 9 o'clock in the morning.
So it doesn't take very long at all, does it?
No. We'll be done about 3 or 4 o'clock. See, it gets real tight on the end. Those strings are real tight.
Good.
You have to bend it together like this and make it nice. So.
No seam at all, see? Just bend it in and you don't see anything.
Such cooperation is typical of life in the Hutterite colonies, where no task is too menial. This group of women would soon be called to the kitchen to help the head cook prepare the midday meal. The lunch we shared consisted of noodle soup, boiled chicken, fried potatoes, fresh home-baked bread, colony canned pickles, carrots, milk, and coffee, all but the coffee colony produced. It was nutritious and tasty. We were told that breakfast might be cornflakes, oatmeal, or eggs with colony-cured bacon. One colony member put the group's daily potato needs at 75 pounds, chicken at 35 per meal 2 or 3 times each week, beef 60 pounds per meal with the bones for soup. And the colony bread is baked twice each week. How many loaves do you bake at a time?
About 45. About 5 o'clock in the morning, and by noon we're finished. Now, my daughter is baking this week. That's why I know.
And true to the tradition of self-reliance found in the colonies, we found a group of girls after lunch who were making noodles. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing there.
Making noodles.
How does this work, and what do you do with them after you take them out of the machine?
Well, we roll them first through one, through this, and then through the other, and then we hang them to dry. And then after they're a little dry, we just cut them through this.
What is this machine doing then?
Well, we make noodles. We use them on Sunday for soup. We put them in soup.
How often do you make the noodles?
Every Thursday.
The emphasis on each colony member assuming his responsibilities to work for the good of the colony is readily apparent among the adults and the young people. They're obviously happy in their work. And yet, children are allowed to be children as they grow to full colony participation and church members. Though the Hutterites believe in general education only through the 8th grade, they were the first people to establish kindergartens. And in their early European history, many wealthy outsiders sent their children to be educated by the Hutterites. Today, as in the past, Hutterite children begin kindergarten at about 2.5 years of age. And it's here that they begin to learn formally about their heritage.
Well, first in the morning when they come here, we give them breakfast. And after breakfast, they prayer. They say some prayers that they know by heart. And then after that, they sing. After they're finished, they just sing and they just play around. And then at 9:15, they have dinner here. We give them dinner, and after their dishes are washed, they're about 11 o'clock, they take a nap. Then after their nap, they stand up and we give them a little lunch. Now they're about ready to go home.
At age 6, the children begin attending German school, so called because of the work in the German dialect that's used daily by colony members. Jake Kleinsasser explains.
6.5, right. And then they go in here and he starts them on the blackboard. First he starts them to write their name. Then he teaches them how to read German. And then they learn some verses, like the one over there. Das ist ein köstlich Ding, den Herren danken und Lob singen deinen Namen, du Höchster. See, that belongs to our church, that verse there. And then you learn the alphabet and everything, First he teaches them to write from 1 to 100, so they can do this. And their name. And then he starts making them read this.
How many hours a day do they attend the German school?
Well, these children don't have to go to the English school. They stay here about 3 hours in the forenoon and 3 in the afternoon.
And how about the other students who go to the English school?
Well, stay at 9 o'clock. It's a deadline. They usually go there around 7:30. And they say their verses. But they're learning. Still in German, as far as that goes, because all our language is German and our church is German when we speak. So that is why we make them learn verses, learn songs, so they can distinguish when they go to church what we're talking about. But we still don't leave our English language out. We do it the way the government and the superintendent wants to have us to do it. 9 o'clock sharp, they go for English. And no German while they are there. Till, like Mrs. Mills told you, at 4 o'clock, then we have another German hour for them to read and write and to explain themselves. Even what we do, we have church every evening. And if they're not in church the once, like those young fellows you got your picture there, those 5 or 8 there, lots of work with the chickens, with the ducks, lambing, and everything else. Well, if they're not in church that evening, they have to explain to the German school teacher why they haven't been. I must say, when I got into those benches today, maybe I shouldn't mention his name, he's in the room, but I said I got a lot of lickings for not going to church. I was a little bad church member once in a while, I'd miss a church. But then I'd get a spanking for that. That's right.
Miller Colony's English or regular school is a private one under the jurisdiction of local and state authorities. The Hutterites point with pride to the fact that although the colonies pay perhaps the largest single share of taxes to support Teton County schools, the colony members support the colony school and pay its teacher themselves. We asked Miller Colony teacher Mrs. Gwen Mills about the curriculum for her 27 students.
Well, we have arithmetic, English, social studies, reading, penmanship, and art.
Is the school supervised by the state or by the county?
Yes, I work under the county superintendent.
And even in school, the work is shared.
9 older girls, right after school, each afternoon at 3:30, come and get their brooms and take it into the schoolroom and clean.
Colony agricultural production is another matter of pride with the Hutterites.
These are tomatoes out here now, and further on in the other room department over there, he has cabbage, onions, and some other various types of vegetables that will not to be able to be grown out in the field. So it gives them a first good start way out here.
Do you grow all of your own vegetables, and then do you sell any of those?
Well, that's it. We depend mostly on selling. We only got 9 acres here, and if you come around in the summertime, when all that's all available, that stuff, we sell out to the stores and stuff. But we get half of the Air Force coming out here buying produce from us, because they're from California and Colorado and all over there, and they know what fresh vegetables are, and they know they can get them here.
So do you sell to any food chains also?
The only thing we do is sell White House Market, those IGAs in Great Falls there. But we never go to Safeway buy a lot of stuff in Butte from us too, you know. But it's good. But you get the same price. You get the same price here as a wholesale price when you come here as they get in the stores.
And then you're able to be pretty much self-sufficient as far as the...
Well, we are. We don't buy hardly anything. We don't buy, I would say, I know what we would buy. We got onions and carrots and tomatoes and everything. We sell out of that stuff. I don't think anybody can raise anything that we can't raise here. That is prepared for Montana. And we've got a license in there from the state of Montana where we can go all over to sell our product. We've got a little trouble with our inspector in there once in a while, but all you have to do is follow his instruction and you goodbye.
Jake Kleinsasser, our guide, is also the potato man at Miller Colony. Big Jake, as he's affectionately known, was most at home with us talking about his own work.
No more lately.
Jake, how many potatoes do you grow here each year?
Last year we had about 120 tons.
And how many of those are consumed as opposed to the number that are sold, would you say?
Oh, we use about 300. We figure about a bag a day. That is for our own use. That's 365 bags. And the rest we wholesale.
And how many places do you sell them to? Do you sell them to chain stores? And
anybody that's got any money, collared or no collared. We don't... These are just commercial potatoes to eat for ourselves. When we pick, I mean for consumers or fill the bags, I mean then we pick out the best ones. That is, so they pass inspection with the inspector. See, all of these, you know, they got to come out, you know, if you're going to fill bags and stuff like that. All those small ones. They've got a house in here where they go through, you know. That's anything that goes through here is a number 2. And then if we make number 1s, we get a bigger. So there it goes through. So they fall out. But that's something I'm picking right now for our own use. I don't want this one. This is good for, not even for chickens. No, I wouldn't. Uh-oh. 2 pound Christmas yet. 2 pound over. Let's go with that. Good, and that's our brand right there, see? They all have to be branded that way, and the other day I shipped in 2 tons, and he rejected on that, so I had to put that on there. Miller Colony.
The largest income producer for the Hutterites in Montana is hog raising, according to a Montana State University Agricultural Experiment Station bulletin. And the Hutterites receive premium prices for their animals because of the high percentage of cuttable meat, according to that bulletin. Here, the modern production methods are apparent even to the unprofessional eye. Automated feed mixing and distribution. Heated hog barn floors and up-to-date methods of separating the sows from their young in farrowing pens so the piglets aren't crushed by their mothers. Most colonies market their hogs in Great Falls or Billings. A small percentage, perhaps 5% of the 1,900 to 2,000 hogs, is butchered for colony consumption. The other of the two largest income sources for Montana Hutterites is wheat and feed grains.
Well, as I see the grain production, Bill, for example, we'll take the colony we were out to. They had 22,000 acres of land, 6,500 acres of farmland. Basically, their grain production is wheat, barley, and oats, and they feed all the grains they raise.
Lyle, how does the yield of the Hutterite farm land compare with that of surrounding farms?
I would have to say their yields are comparable, or perhaps just a little bit better than the surrounding area, because they are on time all the time with all their farming. They have the labor force to do it, and they do have good equipment.
And how about in relation to the quality of land that the Hutterites farm in some areas?
Well, in some areas, the colony we happen to be out to, they had below quality land as far as farmland is concerned. But they do intensify their farming operations in as much as they do heavily fertilize.
And do the colonies, in your experience, have land holdings of comparable size with surrounding farms, or are they larger?
They're basically larger, Bill. They're basically larger than the surrounding farms in the area.
Lyle, do the Hutterites take advantage of and work with the ASCS programs, as do other farmers surrounding them?
Well, I don't like the word advantage, Bill. They take the option of working with ASCS, and of course they're very conservation-minded. They work with their REAP program real well, and they work with the Soil Conservation District real well. They're very conservation-minded.
At Miller Colony, and at many others, production and marketing of eggs is another important revenue source. Miller Colony has 9,000 laying hens. The chicks are purchased at 2 days of age, and by 21 weeks, they're laying eggs. An automatic mill mixes and grinds the feed stored nearby, 5,800 bushels of barley and 8 tons of concentrate kept on hand. Here, too, feeding is automatic. Dave Kleinsasser watches over and, with his helpers, runs a highly automated egg production operation. The eggs are gathered and processed almost entirely untouched by the egg workers, except for the candling or inspecting process. Miller Colony eggs are sold to Great Falls dairies and stores primarily, although anyone can drive up and buy a dozen. Miller Colony raises fed cattle, too, 120 head, with that operation accounting for about 25% of the colony's income. Here, too, automation is a key factor.
See, we have a time switch there, and you set it, and you got the different kinds. You've got your medicated feed, and you got oats and ground barley, and you mix it all together, and you mix whatever ration you want. And you feed them with this auger here.
And it feeds all automatically?
Yeah. That time switch, you can set it from 1 minute to 40. And that's the way it works.
In its cattle feeding, Miller Colony uses much of its own grain, a diversification procedure that's now being stressed in agricultural schools, and that's the coming thing for grain growers. Beef cattle from Montana Hutterite colonies are marketed primarily in Billings or Great Falls. Miller Colony markets in Great Falls at prevailing prices in July each year. The Miller Colony dairy herd is similar to that of many other colonies. It's principally for the needs of the colony members. The herd ranges from 18 to 30 head, depending on the time of year. During the summer especially, each colony boy will learn to work in one or more of the operations like this one, to learn that every colony production unit has some menial tasks that must be done. At the colony dairy, the cream separated from milk the colony doesn't use is sold to Beatrice Foods in Great Falls. The remaining skim milk goes down the drain. And here again, a regular customer with her own cream jar isn't an unusual sight. Though many colonies are beginning to phase out sheep production, Miller Colony remains very much involved in it. Joe Hofer is the sheep foreman.
About 1,000 ewes. And, well, we try to raise as many twins. These particular lambs over here are twins, and we have to keep them separate.
And do you sell your sheep or use the wool?
Well, we sell the wool and sell the lambs. We're starting to feed lambs now, feed them out.
Who do you sell to?
Oh, local buyers like Dawn Allen or Lucilina in Great Falls. Keep it competitive. The highest bidder gets the lambs.
Do you eat lamb here also? Do you?
Well, yes, we eat mutton in the summertime. A lot of it. We don't eat too many lambs. We eat ewes, dry ewes, and we kind of like this meat better.
And a good sheepman has some good tricks for keeping track of his flock.
Well, these black lambs, we keep them for markers. We have about 13 in our band, and generally when 100 or 50 up to 100 sheep stray away from the band, most of the time a black one is with them, or two. And all we have to do is count the black ones in the morning, and we know that all our sheep are, if there's any sheep missing or not.
At shearing time, the colony hires a traveling Mexican crew. One colony member pointed out that last year the Mexican cook wagon broke down, so the colony fed the shearers. And as for the shearers' vehicle that was almost 200 miles away, young men from the colony towed it in and repaired it. Each Hutterite colony raises a number of geese and ducks, too, traditional favorites at colony dinner tables. As we've said, it's impossible for the outsider to fully understand Hutterian life and heritage. A casual visitor to a Hutterite colony, for example, may never see a cemetery where gravestones bear the familiar names that come from the relatively few original families hundreds of years ago. Names such as Hofer, Wirtz, Waldner, Kleinsasser, Whip, and Stahl. A constant reminder of hard times, even when persecution wasn't forcing a move to a new home, to a new country. A number of those who have lived with and written about the Hutterites have pointed out that misconceptions about their lives and heritage seem to increase with the distance from the colonies. And in Montana, that's more truth than theory. The myths are so common that only the facts bear mentioning. The Hutterites do pay taxes, real estate and property taxes at the same or higher levels than neighboring farms, generally because of high production. Miller Colony paid $13,000 in property taxes last year. And there are state corporation taxes and federal income taxes on a partnership basis. Hutterites do marry within the sect, but do not marry first cousins, for example. They are strictly monogamous. And young men often court their brides-to-be over a distance of 100 miles or more when their families visit other colonies. Marriages must be approved by both parents and churches. Divorces are forbidden. Hutterites are conscientious objectors, and their young men do not serve in the military, but they do serve equivalent time working at forestry camps, as did Mike Hofer. And Mike was, as all Hutterites are, free to leave the colony at any time. Few have ever liked the outside better for very long.
Yes, we do not do any military duty, but we go down to, like I was down in Custer State Park in South Dakota and was there for 2 years. And we did all kinds of work, like construction was my main job, and I did a little bit in the wintertime. We butchered a lot of buffalo and fixed campgrounds and things like that, and got equipment ready for the summertime.
What kind of an experience is that for a Hutterite boy who has been on the colony until that time, perhaps?
I think it's a real good experience. I learned a lot when I was down there, and I think all the kids that went down there have learned a lot.
Were you alone or with a group of Hutterite boys?
I was down there with 12 boys that were some that I knew, but 4 of them were from Montana, and the rest were from South Dakota that I'd never have met before. But they were all real nice kids. And
do all the kids go to this one place, or do they serve other places, as far as you know?
Well, some do go to hospitals and stuff like that and work there, but that's about the only place with that kind of work that I know of. And no.
How old are you now, Mike?
I'm 24.
And have you ever thought about leaving the colony?
Oh, yeah, I did.
But you haven't?
Yeah, I did already. I tried it once.
And you're back. Why?
Oh, security, mainly.
The impact of Hutterite colonies on small towns can be a source of both concern and pride to residents of those communities and of the surrounding areas. We asked several people about their dealings with the Hutterites in north-central Montana.
Well, they don't help our business a whole lot because they buy wholesale in the bigger cities and Great Falls. But primarily, they're good people. A lot of nice people out there. But they don't help our business much.
Is that because they can get discounts by buying wholesale in the larger communities?
Yes, they buy in large quantities wherever they can.
How about the trade that you do as far as buying things from them, or that people in communities may do? Are they good businessmen to deal with?
Well, they're not real good businessmen, but they do produce some good farm products. Eggs and potatoes and that type of a thing. They are good gardeners, but they're really not good businessmen in many ways.
Do you buy for your grocery store from them?
We buy some eggs, not all of our eggs. We buy some eggs and some potatoes and other farm produce at times in season.
The company that probably does the most business with the Hutterites of Montana is Wiseman & Sons of Great Falls.
We do business through our 4 stores with all of the Hutterite colonies. And generally I found the Hutterites to be very honest, very capable businessmen. Great Falls is a major trading center, and Great Falls perhaps enjoys more Hutterite business than any other business community in Montana or in Alberta.
Is this because of the discounts or the better prices, do you think?
No, it's because of availability of merchandise. And it's because of the location of the various colonies. There are most of the Hutterite colonies located in the Conrad area, with some in the Augusta area and in White Sulphur Springs and in the Lewistown area. And Great Falls seems to be a hub area for these people to come into.
What about the honesty of the Hutterites that you come in contact with during?
Well, I can't tell you that every Hutterite, like every person, is perfectly honest. But I can say that in proportion to the general population, they are more honest than most people we deal with.
Teton County Extension Agent Mike Goodwin.
I think the Hutterites come in probably as regularly as any of the farmers in the country. The questions are the same: crop varieties, information on livestock production. We've done a lot of work with one of the colonies out here in sheep production, irrigation systems, just average farmer questions. They're just, as far as we're concerned, for another farmer in the county.
And how do they do at farming compared with other farmers in the county?
I hope this doesn't go too far, but I think they're probably some of our best farmers. They seem to get the highest yields. Their crops always look good. Now, they don't publicize their yields like a lot of individuals, but from a roadside viewpoint, they do an excellent job of farming.
What do you find the relationship between the Hutterites and their neighbors to be, Mike?
I think they're generally good. Maybe a good example of this would have been during the '64 flood. The Hutterites were on high ground for the most part and weren't affected by the flood. And they took in, I've heard figures ranging from 20 to 60 different families that were flooded out. They furnished food, vegetables, garden supplies to the people in Choteau that were in need at the time, and they asked nothing in return. So I think the relationships are generally very good.
Is there sometimes some envy, though, about purchasing land and that kind of thing?
I'm certain that there is, because the way they work is, I don't know whether to call it a commune or not, but they have access to much more money than the individual, and they need much more land to operate on. So when these big holdings come up, they're Johnny on the spot with the cash. Okay. And I'm sure this causes so few problems.
Our land is about 13 miles northwest of Choteau, and we are bound on 3 sides by the land owned by the Hutterite Colony. They came in there in about 1947. We've never had any dealing with them except favorable. We have no trouble whatsoever with them.
Mrs. Monkman, what kind of relationship do you think people generally have who border on the Hutterite colonies?
Well, as far as I know, they've been very good. I have not known of anyone to have any trouble with them at all. Their ways are different from ours, but then they can say ours are different from theirs, too. But they've been very good neighbors as far as we're concerned.
Have they helped you out in any way on your farm?
Very little. They adhere mostly to the operation of their own place. However, if we ask them a small favor, why, we've usually been awarded that benefit.
And I understand the Hutterites helped to clean up Choteau during the flood several years ago. Is that correct?
Oh, that's absolutely correct. I tell you, they came in real handy that day, those days. Can't say anything but good for them for the work that they did then, my word. And they help in the bloodmobile down here. Helps out a lot, I tell you.
Probably the greatest threat to the seclusion of the Hutterites today is the increasing complexity of the outside world. A world the Hutterites must keep up with technologically in order to survive economically, yet a world they must live apart from in order for them to have the kind of life they believe God has prescribed. Of those who believe in living other lives outside and in practicing other religions, the Hutterites have no quarrel. As Reverend Hofer of Miller Colony explains, our God is a merciful God. We just believe ours is the safest and surest way. Will the Hutterite way survive in the future as it has for over 400 years? Reverend Hofer says, we see a future, and that's why we're happy. God is guiding us. We couldn't do it by ourselves. It's in the hands of God.